All right, and with that, welcome to the KCP community call. It's been a minute since I've started one of these, so I don't know, hopefully the weather outside is good for you, whatever. This call is governed by the CNCF Code of Conduct, which boils down to let's be excellent to each other. So with that being said, usually I would start with the first agenda point here. Like, don't forget to add yourself in the attendee list if you want to. I'm just gonna do this on stream. So people do not like see it happening. But yeah, usually I would do like a meeting attendee roundtable, like who wants to introduce themselves. I think all the faces here are familiar though, so I will just skip over that today. So with that being said, we have a lot of topics on the agenda, so let's get right to it, because I'm not sure an hour is enough for all of this. So Simon, you have quite a long, let me maybe at a break here, but yeah, why don't you go ahead and talk about the topic?
Thank you. Yeah, so during some work on having more flexible finalizers for workspaces or for the logical clusters behind them, we came across, in a debugging session, Milo and I came across some, I would call it interesting behavior that we have on the deletion relationship between workspaces and logical clusters. Specifically, there's two controllers that are editing the same finalizer on the same object. So I have linked the two code parts into this. So the first link essentially is inside workspace deletion. So if you want to peek into the code, feel free to do so. The short summary of it, like I would just give a summary, I think that's suitable for this meeting, is that there's some checks in there. Is the logical cluster already deleted? And only if the logical cluster is not present anymore, then it would remove the finalizer. Now, this is the workspace deletion code. However, there is also the logical cluster deletion code, which is the second link in there. And again, I would just shortly summarize it in here. Basically, there's a piece of code that reads a field in a logical cluster that describes the owner of the logical cluster. And the owner reference is the reference to a full object. So it's like group version, kind, and so on. And in the case of logical clusters created by workspaces, the owner object is the workspace. So in this case, what it does is it finds the workspace object and then removes the same finalizer. And now you might already be guessing where I'm going with this. This leads to the situation where you try to delete the workspace. The workspace tries to delete the logical cluster. So far, so good. But then logical cluster deletion gets triggered, which removes the last finalizer of the workspace. Poof, the workspace is gone, but the logical cluster never disappears if it has a custom finalizer. Really long story short, in order to work on this, I was curious if we even need this two-pronged relationship between a logical cluster and a workspace, and have therefore written a little proposal. And I would like, Marvin, if you could open it, it's the last link on it. Basically, we went already over the problem statement, and the solution proposal would be basically to remove this part. The solution first is to have the workspace be the desired state object. So if a workspace is deleted or is in deletion, then it's desired object, which also would mean that there is a one-way relationship. You delete the workspace goes ahead, tries to delete the logical cluster, then it requeues itself, checks again, is the logical cluster gone? If logical cluster is gone, remove the workspace finalizers. And if not, requeue. That is what I would consider the easiest solution. But what I would like to discuss there is there any reason why a logical cluster should be able to delete its owner's finalizer? Like, are there other owners of logical clusters where this behavior is needed? MJ?
Is that not the case that somebody else might implement something which looks like workspace? Meaning logical cluster and workspace is just a KCP implementation, but that's not the only possible one. You could write your own object, which basically owns the logical cluster.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might be the reasoning behind it.
But even for this case, instinctively, I would argue that if you create your own object, then you would also be responsible for the removal of the logical cluster, and never the logical cluster would have some generic logic to remove its owner. Would be like my first instinct on this.
Nello, you have your hand up.
We cannot hear you at the moment.
Okay, now you can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond exactly to that. I also don't think that it makes sense for a logical cluster to do some kind of modification of its owner object, because whoever created a logical cluster should also be responsible for deleting it. And the logical cluster, grabbing essentially back towards the owner and then doing something there, like removing its own finalizer, which I also don't think makes a lot of sense. I don't see a reason. I mean, I've compared it when we are discussing this. I compared it to a deployment in the pod. The pod does not access the deployment and deletes the finalizers there, but the deployment checks if all of the pods are gone when it's being deleted. And I think we should go the same way with the logical clusters and the workspaces. And whoever else wants to use the logical cluster, they can, and they don't have this unexpected thing of suddenly there's the logical cluster that they created, grabbing back into their object and deleting something there, or adding, and if maybe it even adds the finalizer. We don't know. Haven't checked, but I don't think it makes sense. Yeah.
I think I agree with that. It feels like this is something that is maybe things got a bit confused in the like refactoring, where like we used to have workspace and cluster workspaces, and logical clusters used to be workspaces. I'm not sure. Maybe it made more sense before the change. Maybe it didn't. But yeah, this also feels backwards to me.
Yeah.
What also could be is that the logical cluster controller existed, and then the workspace cluster controller was written, and the logical cluster was never updated to have this owner reference and finalizer removal removed. So it's just a leftover, which it kind of looks like, to be honest.
So what I'm hearing is PR is in order and we move to the code discussion.
So
PR, I think agreement is there, but it's wrong, and we basically need to fix it. If there is no like a huge fallbacks from the fix itself, I think it's okay.
Yeah, it's maybe an important thing maybe to write down also, Marvin, is this behavior currently would be blocking having custom finalizers. I think this maybe is important to mention, because obviously up until now, yes, it's maybe strange, but it had no impact on the end user so far. But now if we want to have custom finalizers, we will need to change this. Okay, then I would, if Marvin, I think it makes sense, I would create an official issue for it, and also drop the proposal here, like in the issue, and then basically just say the finalizer issue is blocked by that issue, and then normal work as usual.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Then that's all from my side. I wish you guys productive discussions. I will look at the notes afterwards. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, then let's continue with the agenda. I have one topic here that's organizational. We've had an increased influx of users in the KCP users channel. Nello, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with having a separate KCP users channel, because in the last couple days it's been a lot going under and over each other, and I would like to have it separated personally.
All right. Yeah, I think that looks like a consensus already. I see some nodding. Yeah, I think it makes sense. I have to say, I think this is a very happy occasion. I'm very glad that we have so many people going into KCP and like going to it from a user perspective. But I think the development discussions don't have a lot of value to them, and vice versa. I mean, to be honest, no, we learn a lot from like the user questions, but I think it still makes sense to declutter the two work streams essentially. So do I hear this right, that we are all in favor of a KCP user Slack channel? Okay, I assume that's a hand raised in favor. Then conclusion, separate Slack channel makes sense. I think this is not a controversial topic that we need to put to some vote or something in the maintainers. So I will just go ahead and create it after this meeting.
You only have one question?
Yeah.
No, who wants to go first? Robert, you can answer before me.
Sorry. I think the amount of raised hands is around the same topic as we expect it to be. In the light of the recent discussions of moving the discussions themselves out of Slack and into another platform, was there any update on that and any decision where the communication channels would move to? But other than that, I fully agree that we should split it.
Yeah, let's inject that into the agenda, because yes, that's a good point. We had this like for everyone. Nello, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a suggestion to instead of making a new KCP users channel and moving the users to a new destination, I would maybe look into renaming KCP Dev, the current channel, to KCP users, and making then a new KCP Dev channel. Reason behind that is when people have problems, they are going to join into the KCP, the empty KCP users channel. And then they won't find any of the previous discussions around this. And if we rename KCP Dev to KCP users, then we have all of the history for the users with their issues preserved. And we will be in both channels anyhow. That's just a suggestion, maybe not.
I don't dislike that suggestion, but we will need to have a Slack admin help us with that.
We are going anyways with the Slack admin, but the problem with that, I wanted to bring back question before Robert. Where do we want this channel? So the question is Kubernetes at all going to allow us to have this channel in their Slack because we are a dedicated CNCF project in the sandbox? Or are they going to require us to move to the CNCF Slack? So this is one of the problems that we might have. So in Kubernetes, you can't create the channel on your own, as far as you know. Like there's no permission for that, and there is automation actually. So you need to request it from Slack admins anyways. For the CNCF, Slack is different. You can create channels on your own. But we definitely need to figure that out.
Let me write this down. We will require a Slack admin of creating and renaming a channel. Okay. These are pretty good questions. MJ, you have your hand up.
And Robert, you had first.
I think that might have been a leftover. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
So, do we know what's going to happen to Kube Slack in the first place?
We don't have any idea about any of Slacks. Like Salesforce is not pushing to that any longer. What's going to happen if they're going to change their mind again, we don't know. But for now, bottom still was Slack. If there are going to be any migration, this is still unknown. So, yeah.
Can we put a pin on this until like a month, like until this dust settles from this migration stuff?
I don't think it's going to settle this anytime soon. I can pretty much see this handling around until Salesforce pushes this topic again and wants to keep Kubernetes as CSF, however, which might take a lot of time.
Yeah, because I agree with Neil. Like if we can rename it, I think that's a value. If we need to move to different Slack instance, I don't want to do that.
I mean, I think we're not the only CNCF project with channels in the Kubernetes Slack. But I'm not sure if any of these are grandfathered or yeah.
Give you history. Like Kubestellar is there too, Crew is there, Crow is there. It's like quite a few of those are in the Kube Slack. So maybe there will not be a big push. We can ask around, and if rename is possible and create a new one, let's do that. If not,
yeah, you have the, I think it is Slack admins channel on the GitHub, not GitHub, sorry, or Slack, if I'm not mistaken. And you can ping folks there.
Yeah, no, okay. Let me Slack admin. Yeah, Slack admins, there's a channel there. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, if I look at the list of channels,
I mean, that definitely used to be the case in the past. A lot of projects were getting it, even those not related to Kubernetes at all. I'm not sure, so what would be worth checking if this changed in any way since all these issues with Slack that we had in the past couple of weeks.
okay. I guess, does anyone want to look into this? I guess it should be one of the maintainers. So, I can take it on my to-do list if no one else wants to.
thanks for volunteering.
All right. To review current Slack policy.
Yeah,
And-
I actually just found them. And like, should we have a channel on the Kubernetes Slack? It says the channel must be related to Kubernetes in some way. So, yeah. It's a fun topic.
I mean, we can ask if we can be grandfathered simply because we are already here and we have a not short history in the channel. Maybe they will say, okay, that's still okay, but no new projects, something like that. Yeah, exactly. Maybe they will just say, okay, that's fine, and then we won't have this problem. And if they say, okay, no, that's not possible, then we will have to migrate or something. I have the users channel on CNCF and the dev channel on Cube or something. Also not a good not a good solution, but I would say we just ask and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, if we have to move, that might, prune the channel audience a fair bit. I don't think all 900 users who serve the channel are active users or developers of KSP. That I find very unlikely. But it would actually also give us I guess, more accurate image of the active community, of the people just listening in, to see how many people migrate with us, essentially. So that's an interesting data point if we have to move. Excellent. But Marco, that's all right. That almost sounds like that affects that is us, right?
Yeah, I guess we might have an option there.
Okay, I will just ask and we'll see where we go.
Just one more question. What would renaming a channel do to searchability of it? Because
Should be nothing.
yeah. Okay. If people just search for KCP-dev, is that something that would KCP-dev stay or we move to somewhere else?
It will become a brand new channel.
Mhm.
But that searchability is quite good. I think I had experience with some channels being renamed over the time. I
Okay.
don't remember it breaking stuff too much, honestly.
So if we rename KCP-dev to KCP-admin and a user will search for the old name after the fact, would they be able to find us? Well, I mean, it can be also the web page, but just from searching just in the Slack, I'm not sure. And I
So-
don't have any experience with that, so just note.
So from my understanding, at least, so I still have mixed feelings about the renaming stuff, to be honest. I don't want to over discuss this, but it's also going to be confusing that there's an old KCP dev and then there's a new KCP dev, and depends on kind of which channel you're talking about. You might be talking about KCP dev before the name change, or KCP dev, the new channel, after KCP dev has been renamed to KCP users. The question that I have is, should we really rely on the Slack channel to be such a source of information for people to find? Shouldn't user information be in the docs in the first place? And shouldn't we try to keep us to that? Because I think KCP dev, the channel, has, to be honest, the influx of user questions is a fairly recent phenomenon. So most of the conversations that has happened there over the years is actually development. So does it really make sense to rename it? Because it up to now it has barely been a user's channel. If you get what I mean. Is it worth to go through that hassle?
Yes, because people will see that they have KCP dev because they are part of that channel. As someone said, we have how much, 2,000 people, something like that. And they will by default ask there. And then we would have to all the time redirect and say, hey, we don't have KCP users. And that's actually going to take a lot of back and forth, and people then are not going to clean up the message. Then we are going to answer some messages there, and it's going to be complicated.
I see pros and cons for both things. Should we maybe ask this question on the Slack channel itself and get some async feedback? And if we don't hear anything, like I guess the majority here is for renaming, then we go for renaming. But maybe it makes sense to ask that question for all the people that aren't here as well. Nello.
Maybe we could also ask the Slack admins if they have experience with something like that. Because if anything, they would know of something like this, and our case has happened before, and then they will also know how they resolved that and which problems came up. I mean, we are basically doing guesswork.
I mean, I don't think there's going to be any problems per se. It's just I'm just wondering, like the channel doesn't have a very user-focused history. I'm just wondering if it makes sense to retain that history for users. I kind of see Marco's point, like we're going to go through a phase of migration where I guess we will have to play, hey, please ask this question KCP users. We're going to be little Slack bots asking people to move their questions. But eventually, I hope that the place establishes itself as the channel to ask questions. And honestly, I mean, so this is also something that I love. Like I'm seeing user to user help on the channel, but I think the primarily support point for users is still this group. So we will be on that channel, so we will be able to answer questions. The smaller channel is not apart from what Marco said, okay, it looks a bit questionable, but from the actual catching questions, we'll be able to do that. So if everyone is okay with that, I just want to post this as a question on the Slack channel, see if there's any preferences. Also to engage the other maintainers, because maybe I think this is a question where we probably want to have maintainer quorum. And then I would say we go from what we get from there. And that also means that you're very welcome to add a comment on that thread to reiterate your position. So it's not that these positions are now stuck in this meeting or in its meeting notes. Okay, select that to discuss. Okay, then let's maybe go to the enhancement proposals topic. There was for everyone who has not been in that thread, there has been a Slack thread about, well, all the other Slack threads that we are having on the channel. And a lot of them are resulting in kind of important design decisions, or are discussing important design decisions. And as we saw with the Kubernetes Slack almost going away overnight, that is not a good place to store decision making or do decision making. So we have been discussing to bring back an enhancement proposal, or a light version of that from the Kubernetes project to KCP as well. I haven't had, I'm going to be honest, I said in the thread, I'm going to take a look at this. I haven't had the time yet to restart that kind of process and set up some templates and some, to get the ball rolling. So if anyone wants to take that off my hands, I would be very appreciative. Otherwise, it will have to sit on the to-do stack for grids. I'm not seeing roaring volunteering.
I'm not sure what's kind of the work that has to be done. We have to agree on the proposal template, which I think in that thread we agreed that we want to keep it simple for now. So like a few things like what's the motivation, what's the abstract, what are the alternatives considered, and basically proposal itself. But I think what's important, like, so what are we talking about here? Like, a lot of discussion is Slack. We want to preserve the history. So what's important part of the proposal going to be is the alternatives considered in the non-goals. So basically, we want proposal plus those two at least. And yeah. Oh,
Yep. So, I mean, that's kind of the thing. Like someone needs to sit down and think, yeah, exactly like what MJ linked, like there is an enhancement repository. Someone just needs to go in and clean up things and, you know, maybe prepare a little bit of presentation or so for the community call to like talk about what we want to do from now on. Like someone just needs to drive this topic. Like I don't know exactly what needs to be done. Maybe it's not that much. I just haven't had like a focus on it. So if anyone wants to take that like as a driver, it might not be a lot of work. Just need someone with some attention to it.
I could give it a try, but it might be a little while.
To be honest, I don't think that there is much repurposing needed in there. It's the process in there is already way simpler when you cube enhancements. I think we just didn't do a decent job of writing those and agreeing on those and reviewing those.
Yeah. Like one is definitely like cleaning up the one enhancement in there or like updating it. I'm not sure exactly what we want to do with it because I think it's the establishment of the process. So basically someone would need to write/rewrite an enhancement for the enhancement process. Marco, if you like want to add it to your to-do list, I know that's also a long one. Like if we're both saying, oh, it could take a little while, I would maybe say neither of us take this topic by like as a okay, I'm working on this, but as a okay, I could pick this up, and once one of us can pick it up, we would just communicate that.
Yeah, I agree with
Maybe, yeah, or create a ticket because I would maybe do that as well, but I have a couple days, so to speak, planned of work, so I don't know if I would get faster to it than you two would. So maybe just create a ticket and whoever assigns it to themselves first gets to do it.
I think it's enough to communicate on the Slack channel, hey, I'm enough capacity to pick this up. Like it's...
So as the related thing to this, I had this 1-year-old enhancement open, which is already implemented. And before it's not get lost in a rebase and everything, do people are against if I just merge it as a de facto and it will become part of the basically repurposing?
I think go ahead. Like since we've implemented it, I think it was also the one that I reviewed. Sorry for never putting an LGTM
so
on
good.
it.
It's like it's already there.
Okay. All right. So basically, this is like a topic up for grabs, but no one is actively grabbing it right now. I do have one little pet peeve about this topic that I just want to talk about. What do we call KCP enhancements? My proposal is, wait, I can just write this down. Name for these. I would love to have this for the simple reason that you can pronounce it. You just call it KCEPs. I'm not sure I want to call our proposals caps as well. I think that's very confusing because then you never know, is it a KCP cap or is it a Kubernetes cap? I'm not a huge fan of that.
It's kind of strange because it's E and P rotated, so it's easy to pronounce, but Yeah. KCP HTTP proposal. I like this idea better.
KCPEP. That's
KC PEP. Our product has some PEP.
KCP enhancements. It's like, no, but do we really need abbreviation for this?
I mean, you can also go without, but like usually also like Cube has these references, right? Like cap1, cap32, whatever. I like a way to reference these and
Mhm.
have like an index for it would not be bad. I don't think the abbreviation would help.
If it's
Yeah,
for
I agree
indexing?
with the abbreviation part, because then you just have something that you can put into your ticket or your commit or something like it without having to write enhancement number. I don't know. So an abbreviation would be good. Yeah.
Okay, so my vote goes for KSEPs.
Do we have a somewhat consensus on that, or
In my head, it's still KCP enhancement, and this is for like indexing things and
yeah,
things like that.
it mostly is. And that's the thing. Like when I'm thinking about this, like it doesn't have to make the most sense. It just doesn't need to be cap. Like it must not be cap, and it needs to be something that you can pronounce when you talk to people. And I think KSEP is something easier to say than KCP PEP.
Okay, but for history reasons, why don't we want cap?
Because it's confusing, like because we as a project are also impacted by some caps. So like whenever you talk about caps, you always have to add to say, okay, it's a Kubernetes cap or it's a KCP cap.
But it's very rare, to be honest. I think it's very rare. And the numbering of Kubernetes caps is like very large, like they're numbering them in thousands. So even if you find out such, let's say, situation, you would easily be able to figure it out just by the number.
Yeah, but it could also be very confusing for newcomers when they come in and they see, I don't know, cap 20, and then they would look at the Kubernetes enhancement proposal 20 and say, that has nothing to do with what we want or what's being discussed here. So I think we are in the cube space, so reusing the same abbreviation is basically shadowing.
What about just
Yeah, I
like
agree.
app without anything, like enhancement proposal?
I think I'm also looking for something unique. I don't know. Because then
Let's
it's
Let's use the initials of everyone in this meeting. MMNMRC. Okay, it's going to be a problem.
we don't let Christoph name things.
No, I won't. So I find KCEP confusing. KCEP. I will always think there's a letter missing. Why did they leave the P out? That makes
Me
no
too.
sense. It will trigger me every time. I see MJ is slowly getting warm to my idea.
Yeah, I'm getting warm to that. It's like KCP enhancement proposal, and that's it. It's like,
Let's not make it
KCP.
overcomplicated.
yeah.
Okay. 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 I'm just wondering, how would you like say this in a meeting?
KCP app?
KCP enhancement proposal.
Okay. Okay.
Like,
Fair.
why not? Why you want to make things shorter, abbreviation, everything? It's
Efficiency, MJ. No. Okay. No. Do we have a consensus for KCP app? Because I don't care about this too strongly.
Or just KP. KCP proposal. Almost.
But then it's confusing that we're calling them enhancements, except for in the abbreviation.
Oh no.
I
Okay.
like it at least better the second one than the previous one. So with P is better than without the P. That's all the relations I can give you.
All the peace in the world.
Okay, I honestly at this point we're bike sharing this too much, and mostly because of me. So I'm perfectly fine with KCP apps, and we go with that. I mean, to be fair, nothing set in stone, but yeah, it doesn't matter that much. Okay, we have other topics on the agenda, and some of them are kind of big, so we should talk about them. So one of the topics MJ and I, and to some degree Christoph, have been talking about, like running KCP in a multi-shard setup. We've primarily run into like unexpected things with the KCP operator, basically being the second way to install KCP instances now. MJ, do you want to show your slides and talk about it, or?
Yes, let me do that. I don't think we're gonna get to the consensus in this one, but I think we might need to come back next week, in 2 weeks. So it's more for a thinking, like basically putting a thinking caps on and having this. Okay, let me see. Okay, so virtual workspaces consumption patterns. So there is a bit code name of this. So what the problem is? The problem is that when you're dealing with sharded instances, and that might not be in only sharded instances, like a single shard instance has the same problem. And you expect external consumers of the virtual workspaces, you need to be able to access them without compromising security. Basically, how to enable external parties to participate in your KCP operations without breaking security, scalability, and effectiveness of the system. And why this is a problem and where. So when you're creating an API endpoint slice, basically the main way how you consume basically APIs, we're getting this place where your workspaces usually have an external URL. Not in my case here, but that's usually external URL which user reaches the ability. By design, virtual workspaces, and especially in the endpoint slices, are per shard. Because architecturally, in this case, you would have 2 controllers or multi-cluster controller runtime watching both URLs and acting on them individually. So these are per shard. Architecturally, idea was that sometimes you might want to run controllers close to the shards. Example, if you have shards in Europe and States, you want to have 2 reconcilers in both locations close to that. And where this data is getting propagated from, it's getting propagated from the shards. So when you bootstrap a system under shards, you have 3 configuration variables, like base URL of the shard, external URL, which you use to baseline the workspaces in that shard, and you have virtual workspaces URL, which you use to construct the previous one URLs. And the problem now comes that these URLs are usually private. They are not exposed to the internet. Front proxy is the gateway to the system, not these URLs. So this is basically, just to recap this, what's your usual architecture? You have API bindings, front proxy, your gates from the outside, and let's assume you have external providers wanting to interact with endpoint slices. These URLs are per shards, so not possible. And we've been brainstorming a few ideas how this could be solved, and this is one of those. So option 1 is basically every shard is exposed to the internet via one or another way, basically. It has a public URL. Because nothing stops now to have a load balancer, to have a DNS name for your shards and expose them directly. This means now these URLs become public, and you can point controllers and they watch that directly on those. There is a security concerns immediately falling in that if you have a vulnerability of something you can do directly to the shard, which might be prevented in a front proxy, you're kind of exposing yourself to that area. Option 2 is we have a maybe dedicated mini shards front proxy, like separate process itself, basically, which does something similar than front proxy, but for shards. It's very similar to, like, close to what we have now in architecture-wise. Option 3 is we say no external controllers. Like, we don't build this pattern altogether. We say, if you want to use something, get your own KCP instance, run this stuff, and we work on connecting control planes together, control instances versus that. It's an option. I'm not sure if you want to do that, but I just wanted to put it out there. Option 4 is we make front proxy API export aware, meaning that there is now some endpoint. Maybe you put an annotation on API exports, and it basically creates a routing path from the front proxy to the URLs and their different name. So basically, we bring it in-house. And this allows to, let's say, have a second front proxy, which is configured only for API exports, the primary one for user traffic. So the downside of that is you lose the ability to run close to the shards. You could, in theory, do that by having multiple front proxies. And option 4 is basically running Nginx or any other of your favorite ingress controllers and just exposing certain URLs on the export. So very similar to option 1, just having this additional layer of security provided by Ingress. And at this point, I think I'm very much open to discussion. We have 10 minutes left. So basically what people think about this, or this problem in general, and how we should tackle it.
Maybe to add one thing, from what the flags do and all, I feel like the intent was to expose shards individually in the system architecture. The thing is just we have not been doing that in our, let's say, setup methods that we have. I think the Helm chart is a single shard setup, so it doesn't have that problem. But we've essentially, I think, like at least in the open source space, never ran KCP in the intended model. And the question is, do we think it's the right model, or do we I was also thinking like what MJ presented, like that the front proxy is capable of routing virtual workspaces more smartly and all of that kind of stuff. But any opinions?
I like option 4, the last one, the smarter front proxy one.
No. Yeah.
That seems the most natural to me, to have front proxy that, is your front proxy. I don't really understand why shards would be publicly available, but that's a core design goal in KCP. But why?
So,
also depends if shards are geographically distributed or if you have, shards just as a scaling option 1 physical location. Yeah, why are shards meant to be public?
So shards being public is not a new architecture. Like multiple cloud, I will not name which cloud providers, but most of them, they have this way. Like every data center has East US dot certain random string dot something up something .com. There are public URLs on the internet exposed for those locations, but when you're hitting Cloud Console or API, you're hitting their alternative of front proxy, which routes to those public endpoints via internet or via VPNs, depends on where we are. So I think that's just people doing this stuff for ages. So you could do that, but for me, having more options on the table, I think is good too. Like if you don't want to use front proxy and you just want to expose shards directly, I think that's possible. I just don't want to open ourselves to certain endpoints might not get authenticated or validated enough, and now be basically exposed to the internet.
Nido.
I also think that option 4 makes the most sense based on what I've seen so far in the code and the architecture. And I think with exposing shards or not exposing shards, at the end of the day, that would be something that would be left up to the quote-unquote installer, also the owner of the KCP instance of the infrastructure, and they can rewrite their URIs however they want in their operators. I mean, if they are deploying shards, then they will exposing them to the internet, then they will give them some kind of reasonable, I would say, ingress name, and then they can match this however they want. Unless we have some kind of check in the code that rejects requests when they are not the expected endpoint, expected domain, but I don't think so. So, yeah.
I think the current the situation in the KCP code right now assumes, I think, that shards are public. And we need to think about, like, if we want to go with this option 4, like with the front proxy having basically a virtual workspace routing capability, then we have the problem that API export endpoint slices do not make sense anymore suddenly, like at least not for external consumption. And then we should, because it's going to be one URL, right, MJ?
No, you could have endpoint slices have a partitions. So once you have more than 5 shards, like you can have a partitions. URLs, they should be still distinguishable via front proxy. Because you want to, because imagine architecture where you have 2 geolocations, States and Europe. In most cases, you will want to run 2 front proxies on both locations. And now your controller needs to be smart enough to target, like either you go through the one entry point and reconcile both. So it's mix and match, basically. You can do that stuff. But I don't think that should be like some kind of aggregation to one URL.
But so at least how it is right now, I think the assumption, there are 2 assumptions basically. The front proxy is only available via one global DNS name, because that's how KCP inject, like that's the external host name flag, right? And injects that into everything that's, kind of like front proxy going, or like via the front proxy. And I think the idea behind that was that you have like GeoDNS, where like this host name points to different IP addresses or to different front proxy instances based on where you are in the world. So based on that, you can't differentiate like which front proxy you're going to end up with. And the other thing are the shards. When you want to talk to a specific region directly, like the API export endpoint slice is specifically done to do that. Like it's specifically not to like go through the front proxy, but to like target individual parts of the KCP installation. And I don't think these two concepts can be married to each other in this scenario. Like if either the front proxy route, so if the front proxy routes with the workspaces, like the API export, then you just hit one URL with your controller. Or the front proxy would need to do this kind of would need to do endpoint slicing. Like this is all going to look very weird. The more I think about it, I think I would be in favor of option 1 of 5. Just make the shards publicly accessible.
Should we invest the time and prove the setup where external, like you expose shards via Nginx, an example? I'm wondering how hard it would be if every shard has Nginx with a DNS name configured and basically make them public, but not public with Nginx protection or something like that.
I mean, definitely, if you want to put something in front of it, well, you have the problem of client certificate authentication, same as with the front proxy.
Yeah.
But you could definitely expose it via gateway API also. And I think with the operator, we could relatively easily build such a scenario and try it out, because I think I think this is the intended mode of running KCP, so it will probably feel very natural. Question is just if we want to keep that and if we want to promote that, because right now it's that there is no way to install KCP in this way, basically.
Yeah. Because as much as I like option 4, it breaks the scalability pattern. The main idea behind the endpoint slice is you have 5 shards, 5 URLs, and if you have a high velocity controller, high throughput, you run 5 instances of it and you point to each and every partition, single URL per locations. So same high throughput traders, they want to put their stuff close to the trade center. You might want to do that something similar. So this is why I said, and we are on time, I don't expect us to come up with a solution. I think doesn't matter what you do next 2 weeks. Think about this, sit on this. I think we're gonna come back to this. I don't think it's a burning topic for us now, but there were open questions in a chat and for us too, how do we position this?
To me, shards were always a lower level scaling instrument, not something I would expose directly to anyone. Right? Nobody should technically care how many shards I have in my region. One region wouldn't be in my level, in my understanding, not one shard, but a group of shards fronted by one front proxy. So I have one front proxy per region. So I would just scale it one layer up. Exposing shards feels very low level. Anything that wants to have shard access needs to run in the same cluster where my shards are running. So very close to heart.
The problem is that understanding clearly goes against what the design currently expects to happen. But yeah, we can talk about this, I think, an hour more. So as MJ said, think about this some more. I think we'll have smaller conversations and smaller groups in the coming weeks, maybe hopefully about this as well. And then maybe we can reach an async consensus slowly but steadily, because we're now out of time. Christoph, I'm very sorry that we couldn't get to your topics. We can either push them in 2 weeks, or you can open a thread on the channel for async discussion, whatever you prefer. Okay, with that, thank you very much, folks, and have a great evening, and I guess see you soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.